Welcome to the Navigating My Crazy podcast. I'm Shayla. Navigating My Crazy is a weekly podcast created for moms trying to balance life, family, purpose, and wanting to improve their mental wellness. Our goal is to inspire conversations necessary to end the stigma associated with mental health and the unrealistic societal expectations related to being a mom. But most importantly, to create a community so that no mom ever feels alone as we all navigate this crazy thing called life together. This episode is brought to you by Shayla Shaw Empowerment. In addition to hosting and producing this podcast, I am a certified empowerment coach for moms. Are you in need of support and accountability as you work to achieve personal and professional goals? Are you looking to enhance skills, resources, and the creativity needed to overcome depressive behaviors, preventing you from being present, thriving, and enjoying your family? Then you need an empowerment coach. If you have any questions or want to set up a consultation, email me via shayla@shaylashaw.com, or if you want to know more about me or my services, visit shaylashaw.com. Let's start this show. All right, everyone. Thank you for joining again the Navigating My Crazy podcast. Today, I have Maria, and what she'll be discussing is how she was able to help diagnose and then how she now deals with the day-to-day activity that surrounds having a child with type 1 diabetes. Maria has been married almost 10 years, and she has two beautiful children. She has Amanda, who is 4, and Alexander, who is 1. So thank you so much, Maria, for joining us.
Thank you for inviting me.
No problem. And so I reached out to her to ask her to join the podcast because I really thought her story was very interesting and wanted to really share some of the tips and tools that she has with other parents with children that have diabetes. So Maria, if you don't mind, tell us how you noticed the symptoms in your baby when she was younger.
Okay, so we had just come from vacation from Puerto Rico, and my husband and I, we started noticing this weird cough. We thought that she was just like getting sick, and we tried to do some very non-conservative stuff. But after a month passed, I asked the pediatrician to refer me to a pulmonologist. So we went to the appointment, and on the same day that we had the appointment with a pulmonologist who diagnosed her with pulmonary reactive disease, he said that her lungs were a little bit inflamed because she must have been sick. So just to give her inhalers, that's it. 18-month-old checkup. And I was telling the doctor what she was doing. And the doctor was like, don't worry about it. Let's just give her a nebulizer treatment and some prednisone. So I'm like, okay, fine. So I'll see you again in a few days, because if she gives a child some medication, she doesn't do the vaccines. We went home. I put Amanda to bed just like we normally do. Around midnight, she woke up crying hysterical. I was like, okay, this is like a weird cry. So when I went over to pick her up, the bed was soaked with urine. She was crying like a very desperate cry, and it freaked me out a bit. So I just picked her up and I changed her diaper. I changed the bed sheets and all that stuff. And I thought that she was hungry. So I gave her a few ounces of milk. I was still nursing her at that time. So I gave her like about 6 to 8 ounces of milk so that she could go through the night. 2 hours later, around 2 a.m, she woke up again with a very desperate cry, and her diaper was soaked once again. So I was like, this is too weird. As almost 16-month-old baby going through this is just too weird. I work for Social Security, so I do look into medical records all day. And in the back of my mind, I was like, could it be diabetes? No, it can't be. She's only a baby, and kids get diagnosed at a later life. I put that on the back of my mind. I attended to my child. I gave her a little bit more milk, and she went to bed. 2 hours later, again, the same thing. So I was like, I cannot keep giving you milk. This is too much. Right. So instead of milk, I gave her about 8 to 10 ounces of water. And she drank that like there was no tomorrow. And that freaked me out a lot. So what I did is I told my husband was knocked out because he works nights. So he didn't even notice what was happening. In the morning, I told my husband, Amanda's not doing well. There's something weird about her. So just keep an eye on her. I'm going to call the daycare and I'm going to, tell them what's going on. I was like writing down more or less the symptoms and the stuff that she was doing, because that was from a Monday to a Tuesday, and we were going back to the pediatrician on a Thursday, and I want to have evidence. After that night, she was okay. She didn't have that desperate cry that she had like the first night, but she was always soaking her bed and drinking a lot of water. When we went on Thursday for her visit, one of the first things that I told the pediatrician was that Amanda was peeing a lot and drinking a lot of water. And the pediatrician was like, the first thing out of her mouth was, I hope it's not diabetes. And I said, that's my fear. She tested her right away, and the urine came back with protein, or I think it was protein or sugars in the urine. Obviously, after that, she sent me to the ER. Her blood sugar was 419. So that's very high. Regular, normal blood sugar for non-diabetic is under 100. So she was 3 times over the limit.
Wow.
The pediatrician, before she sent me to the ER, she did call to the ER department to let them know that I was on my way, that a 16-month-old baby had diabetes. And a lot of people like over there didn't believe it. They were like, are you sure? Like a baby with diabetes? That's not common. But when we went over there, they did the finger prick, and yeah, she was 419. I'm just thankful that the pediatrician heard me, because she really is this type of doctor that she hears her patients. And she hears moms, because her motto is moms know their kids best.
Absolutely. Since they were all so surprised, is it rare that babies that age develop diabetes?
It's not common. I don't know the percentage, but it's a very low percentage. And ever since she was diagnosed, every time we go back, there's been like not even 5 more babies that have been diagnosed with diabetes. So she's been diagnosed for 3 years now. In those 3 years, I think 5 more babies under the age of 1 or around the age of 1 have been diagnosed with diabetes, at least here in my hometown in Springfield area in Massachusetts.
Okay. Wow. So as far as changes, of course, from that day forward, were there major changes in your routine now that she has diabetes that you guys had to incorporate?
My job is very flexible. We only work 35 hours a week. So in that time a week from 7 till 4, and I had Mondays off. Ever since Amanda was diagnosed, I had to change my schedule. I had to go back to the 5-day, because my husband and I, we don't trust a lot of people managing her since she's so small. Mm-hmm. And my husband also had to change his schedule. So he was working basically from noon till around 10-ish, 11 at night. And he had to switch his schedule to go in at a later time at 3 p.m. up until like 1 in the morning. He's with her during the day. So we have to train every time we change schools or daycare. We have to train people on how to give her the injection. She's currently in the pump, but at that time, how to check her blood glucose and even some of the foods. She doesn't have restrictions on food, but in the beginning we did, because we didn't know how her body was going to be reacting to it.
Right. So initially when she had the diagnosis, was she being fully breastfed?
She was mixed. I was nursing her at night. Basically, I nursed her every time I went to my house. I got off from work and I nursed her from the time that I was with her up until like time she went to bed. Mm-hmm. But during the day, drinking cow's milk. We didn't dive into the almond milk because we were scared of any allergies. Right. But she was eating everything else. She was in baby food. She was eating grown-up food. Yeah, the breastfeeding was supplemental.
So what are some of the dietary restrictions that you guys had to kind of figure out along the way?
At the moment, she cannot drink regular cow's milk. The milk that we buy for her is a Fairlife milk because it is high on protein and low on like sugars and carbs. It only has like for every cup, like 6 carbs. We were noticing that with the regular milk, she like for every cup, it was like 13 carbs, and that shoot her straight up to the 300s, 400s. For bread, we give her wheat bread. We've noticed that's the best one that works for her. She loves bananas, but bananas are very sugary. Yes. So we can't give her that. We only give it to her on occasions and if she's low. If she has a low blood sugar, low meaning under 70. 70 and below, that's a low blood sugar for her and for most diabetics. And her highs, we have set it up for 200 and above. Some people have it more restrictive, but for her, since she's so small, we have it up until like 200. I didn't used to read labels. So if it's a new food, I go to the label and I see how many carbs, sometimes added sugar, that can affect her, the ingredients that it has, because depending on the ingredients that it has, it lasts for a while on her system. So that means she's gonna be tending to run high for longer periods of time. But other than that, we let her eat her cake, eat her ice cream, her French fries. She's obsessed with French fries. We just give her more insulin. And I do some settings on her pump so that on top of the insulin that I'm giving her, she receives some more insulin on her basal.
We talked about training. So how were you trained to manage her condition? Or did you just have to kind of learn along the way?
Well, the hospital that we have here in Massachusetts, it's an amazing hospital. After we were discharged from the ER, we stayed overnight just because it was so late that afternoon when she was diagnosed on March 3rd, 2016, that the office where you get trained for diabetes was closed. It was after hours. So once we were discharged, we went straight to like a mini boot camp for parents, for kids who have diabetes. So we were going the entire weekend and the entire week just to catch up with the nurse and see how to give her the injections, how much insulin we needed to give her, and her basal. As a child, I do have a very good health insurance. Thank God for that. But when a child or a person is formally diagnosed with diabetes, they don't go straight to the pump. They go to MDI, which is multiple daily injections. So basically during the day, the child or the adult, they do receive a lot of injections to lower their blood sugar, or if they're going to eat, they need an injection because her pancreas, as a type 1 diabetic, the pancreas literally is not working, is dead, basically. That's what it is. The body self-attacked her pancreas and it stopped working. And it's very different from type 2. Type 2, your pancreas is still working, but it's not working properly. You need oral medication in order to help flush out the sugar. But for type 1, you need artificial insulin in order to take the sugar to the cells so that you can function normally. So they taught us how to inject her, how much insulin. She needed so little because she was only like, she was a baby. Like she needed like half needed for food. It was such a small amount. Literally, if I could drop it in my hand, it was like a drop, like a little drop of insulin, but that was all she needed in her little body. And after that, they basically taught us on how to rotate her sites. We couldn't inject her in the same spot over and over again because then adhesions would grow and then her body would not absorb the insulin properly. And that could lead to high blood sugars and like a whole other complications can happen. But basically they taught us on how to inject her, how to read labels, what to look for in symptoms for high blood sugars and low blood sugars. For high blood sugars, the person is very thirsty and sometimes their personalities can change. They can be more irritable or they can cry. It all depends on the person. And if a person has low blood sugar, they will sweat and they can be tired. They can fall asleep. And that's when the falling asleep is kind of scary, because if they're very, very low, they can go into a coma.
Right.
So we were poking her a lot, meaning more than 10 times a day, just to check her blood sugars.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So even if she was going to eat something, we needed to poke her to see how her blood sugar was going to be like. 2 hours later, we needed to check her again to see if she was low, if she was high. It was like a whole gamut of like poking and injections that we were in the first 5 months.
So how was,
it's a lot.
How was her reaction the initial times? I'm terrified of needles, like even as an adult, the little tear forms in my eyes. So how was it for her adjusting to being stuck all the time?
She didn't mind it. She was so little. She didn't know what was going on. Mm-hmm. Now that she's older, that she's 4, oh no, you can't, I cannot get her to get an injection. Oh. So since she was so small, she didn't mind it. And she was like, okay, you're poking me. Okay, fine. And she went on and about her day. Now it's a whole different story. Now I can't say the same thing. But by month 5, after her diagnosis, the nurses, they pushed the insurance to get her on the pump. Mm-hmm. So that liberated us as parents and as caregivers so much. When you get a pump, you have an infusion site. And it's similar to when you have an IV in the hospital. A little cannula under your skin. And that's where the insulin goes through, because you absorb the insulin through your skin if you need to be corrected. Mm-hmm. For infusion sites, we change her sites every 3 to 4 days. And I'm not supposed to say that, but the endocrinologist did the okay, as long as I'm keeping an eye on it. And I do it that long time, like 3 to 4 days, because she hates the changing. Right. A lot, because it has a needle. In order for me to insert the little cannula inside her skin, she needs to be poked with a needle in order for me to put it in. But it liberated us because she could eat whatever she wanted. We didn't need to poke her multiple times. Right. We just sent more insulin through the pump. That's it. She just ate like a bread, and we covered that with the insulin. And then she wanted, let's say, a banana. Mm-hmm. So we gave her a little piece, and we gave her more insulin without even poking her for that banana. So it opened a little bit more freedom for us. She could eat whatever she wanted. Right. And we didn't need to carry all of the syringes that we needed to carry every time that we went out. So every time we went out, we needed to pack her syringes, pack her little vial with the insulin, and everything like her glucagon. Glucagon is for when a person has a low blood sugar. If they are unconscious, you need to inject them with that because they can't eat. They're in a coma. So, we've never come to, thank goodness. But in the case of us doing that, we needed to carry that. What else? This was pre-pump. Now, post-pump, we still need to carry her syringes, 2 different insulins. One is the fast-acting one, which is for high blood sugars and for correction for food, and the long-acting one, because if her pump fails, she still needs insulin 24 hours a day. And that's where the long-acting one comes in, where she needs the 24-hour insulin. But because she's on the pump is constantly sending insulin to her body. So we don't need to worry. She only uses one insulin right now. It's called Novolog. And on the 24-hour, she receives right now, I had to up her insulin because she's growing and her hormones are getting a little bit crazy. In her last endo visit, she was receiving 7 units. I would say like a teaspoon of insulin. Now she's receiving a little bit more than a teaspoon of insulin. She's about 8 units right now. So she went up by a whole lot.
Right. So is she in school now? I know she's 4.
Yes, she's in pre-K. She's in pre-kindergarten. When we enrolled her, I had to train. There's a nurse. And I had to train the nurse, even though they might have some knowledge in diabetes, but this nurse is very open to learning. And she is the first little girl in the school that has this condition. So the nurse didn't know what to do, like the times. More or less, she knew the signs of what to see, but on how to actually manage her, she didn't know how to do that. So I had to train her on it, and I had to give her some instructions given by her endo doctor. And basically, she still calls me every day, just letting me know, hey, Amanda's going to eat this. How much insulin, more or less? And I tell her how much insulin. She's like, that's what I'm thinking.
Okay.
So,
yeah, just to give her more confidence.
Yes. But she's a normal little girl. She takes the bus, and the people on the bus know that she has diabetes. They have made some accommodations that she's like one of the last students to be picked up. That way, her time on the bus is shorter. Sometimes she's still not aware of her lows. So she would say, I don't feel right, but it's not consistent. I'm trying to teach her. If she's low, I'm like, Amanda, how do you feel? And she's, I don't know, my tummy hurts. So I'm like, okay, that's because you're low, or that's because you're high if she has another symptom. So I'm trying to teach her to follow and hear her body on how she's actually feeling.
Okay, that's good. I know it's you and your husband, but outside of you guys, how is your support? Like you said, it's 24 hours a day.
Yeah, well, basically it's my husband and me most of the time, but my sisters do live close to me, and they venture to take care of her. In the beginning, I'm not going to lie, it was hard. When Amanda was still in the injections, we didn't let anyone take care of her, because with injections, if you gave her too much, then it would have been a problem. Once she was in the pump, it was a little bit easier to control, because everything you need to input it. And I had placed some security systems in her pump so that she wasn't overdosed, basically. Now my sisters do take care of her. Next week, we're going to go to the movies, and one of my sisters opted like, oh, I can take care of the kids. Yeah. So we're going to have a little bit of a mini date, my husband and myself. Long awaited, but my mom doesn't live here. She lives in Puerto Rico, but every time that she comes over, she says, don't worry, I'll take care of her. And if something happens, I'll text you. Or I'll call you. I'm like, okay. So
first time that you guys were able to get away, how was that?
Oh my God.
It was more stressful than you had fun.
It was awful. And now we feel a little bit more comfortable. She wears CGM, which is a continuous glucose monitor. She has 2 things on her body: the CGM on her arm and the pump on her waist area. So she's like a mini robot walking around. But with the CGM, we felt more freedom, because I have an app on my phone. I can be at Hartford, because I work in Hartford, even though I live in Massachusetts. I can be in Hartford working, and I can see her blood sugars from my job. And I'm like about 40 miles away from her. My husband can go to Puerto Rico, and he can see from Puerto Rico her blood sugars with this amazing tool. Is Dexcom. I'm not a sponsor for them.
Awesome, because it gives you, more freedom, and you feel a lot more safe.
Exactly. And now, like the first time that we went out, she had that. And I'm not going to lie, it was very hard. Angel and I, we were looking at our cell phones like all the time. How's Amanda's sugars? Is she going down? Is she going up? And if she was going down, I would text my sisters, or the person was taking care of her. Like it could be my mom. Mom, give her this. Or Carla, that's one of my sisters, give her this. Or give her a little bit of insulin. And we were like remote, wherever we were, in the restaurant or in the movies, we will be texting them on how to manage her conditions. Like now that she has all these tools, it has given us more freedom. And now my sisters feel better in taking care of her because they know that we're kind of like OCD parents, helicopter parents, but you need to be like that with a child with this chronic condition. So they feel that we're backing them up and they know. So they were like, okay, sure, I'll take care of them because they know that we're going to be looking at our cell phone. But we do try to be better at it. I'm not going to lie, it's hard, but we do try not to look too much when we're out.
And so you also have, in addition to Amanda, you have a 1-year-old. So how was the expecting and having a new baby? How was introducing a new baby to your lives when you have so much attention that you have to give to Amanda?
In the beginning, when I was pregnant with Alexander, I was so scared. My mom was like, don't call it tragedy. But I was like, Mom, what if this child is type 1 as well? I did ask one of the doctors the chances of this child having diabetes as well. And they said that it's the same chance as Amanda had. It's like the lower 1 to 5%. I'm like, okay, so I'll keep my eye on it. Amanda loves babies. We always talk to her about the baby that I was growing in my belly and that she was going to be a big sister, that she was going to be having a baby brother. She was excited for it. I read books to her, but she took it very well. On the day of birth, it was like a whole chaotic moment that I'm not going to get into. She was almost present, like literally in the birth. After I had him, she was there. So she was able to see all the things that they were doing to him, measuring him, weighing him. We have been able to incorporate her in so many things of Alexander so that she doesn't feel she was taking the back seat. We made her part of everything that was happening. Yes, she got a little bit jealous a bit because I was nursing Alexander and then she saw that I was going to nurse her. I had to teach her, no, you're too big. You're not going to be nursed, but you can be here with mommy. So you can be right here next to mommy while I give Alexander his leche, because I say it in Spanish. And I taught her, this is your leche, this is your milk, and this is Alexander's milk. So she learned very quickly to differentiate. And I incorporated her in everything, in the diaper change, in the bathing, like everything. And now they're like mini best friends, basically.
That's awesome. How was it for you as a mom with the attention that you have to give to her and her condition to also incorporate a baby into that?
Well, the first month, it was challenging. My mom stayed with me for over a month to help me.
Awesome.
Yeah, even for Amanda, she did the same thing. It was challenging in the way that sometimes Amanda's sugars were running a little bit high and I needed to give her insulin. I was doing two things at once. I was nursing the baby and I was giving her insulin at the same time. Or I was nursing the baby and I was giving her something to eat because she was running low.
Right.
Also, Angel, during that time, he was with me a whole lot. So he helped me a lot in the beginning. So he managed Amanda more and I focused more on Alexander. But after all that was done, I basically just did two things at once. Sometimes, I'm not going to lie, I did go crazy. And I did cry and all these emotions went all at the same time. But my mom always taught us to be very self-reliant and to be brave. She raised us by herself, 4 girls. She divorced when I was 5. And she raised me and my sisters all by herself with some help of my grandma. And one of the things that she said is that you need to be strong for your kids. You need to be there. You need to be the model for your kids because they look up to you. I don't know, maybe it's a Latina thing that she taught me.
It's our culture also because, we come from that, wanting to be strong and just really taught to always be strong. And that does make it hard sometimes because sometimes you do just want to cry.
Yeah. And I still, every once in a while after 3 years, I still cry every once in a while, especially when she says, no, mommy, not today. I don't want to be change the infusion. No, it hurts. No, this. And sometimes when I see little kids eating cake without a care in the world, and I need to tell Amanda, you need to wait because you're high, it just breaks my heart. And, I try not to cry in front of her. I just hold my tears, but I could go into a room and just let it out there. Because sometimes I do think that you need that outlet. If not, you'll explode, literally.
Right. The blog. So I know you said you've been doing that for about a year. So what made you just say, let me go ahead and start. Let me put this information out and help other people?
I know that I'm not alone in this. One of the things that made me do this is because one of the nurses in Bay State, every time there's a new child diagnosed, obviously the parents, like we were, are destroyed. She calls me every once in a while and says, Maria, there's this new family that was diagnosed. Do you mind if I give them your number so that you can talk to them? I'm like, sure. At the moment, I haven't received any phone calls.
Right. But at least they have someone.
Exactly. Because they see that I'm very proactive. If I see that Amanda's sugars are going high, I take action. Action meaning that I increase her basal, like the amount of insulin that she's receiving during the day. If she is like running low, I adjust her settings again. If I see that a food is reacting a certain way on her body, I either give less to her or stop giving it to her. So they've seen that I'm not a person that just sits there and wait for an appointment every 3 months just to wait for the doctor to tell me what I know I'm supposed to be doing.
Right.
So I think because of that, they feel that I would be a good quote unquote support coach to these parents and just empower them, because parents need to be empowered. Because doctors can recommend what you need to do, but in the end, you know your child. You know what's happening because you're living it 24/7. They are not. They're there for you just to hear you out and give you a guideline. I think they feel that I can help these parents. And that's one of the things that I'm like, maybe I can actually help other people in other parts of the world. Absolutely. And that's why I also started the blog. I was like, maybe I can start shifting my focus towards raising a child with diabetes from a mom's perspective. Like, what do you need to take when you travel? Because sometimes people don't know. They're like, oh my God, you don't need to take a whole bunch of stuff. You feel that you do, but you don't. What places you need to check out when you travel? Like, I always check, what's the closest hospital? What's the closest pharmacy? Where am I going to be at? What's the route? Same thing about the symptoms. A lot of people don't know the symptoms of diabetes. There's a lot of little kiddos, and it's so sad that they're misdiagnosed because the medical field doesn't think to check for diabetes. Right. They just think, oh, it's a viral. Yeah. They just think, oh, it's a cold. They're going to get through it. I just want to empower other moms and dads just to advocate for their kids. Them just fight. And right now I'm going to be working on one about health insurance, because I do have an amazing health insurance, but even if you have a good health insurance, you do have some roadblocks. Right. All this month has like the whirlwind roller coaster ride for me and my health insurance about stuff that I want for Amanda, changing her medical equipment and all that stuff. So it's a never ending struggle that sometimes doctors don't see. Right now, my husband and I, we're teaching her how to be independent. So I want to talk about that because yes, I can be a little bit of a helicopter mom, but I do recognize that I'm not going to be there for my child forever and ever and ever and ever, because I'm going to grow old, and eventually she's going to grow out of my house. She's going to grow into a young woman, and she's going to go to college, then get married and have kids. And I want to teach her how she can do all that with diabetes. So I don't want her to be like stopped that just because she has this condition that she's limited, because she's not.
Right. That's awesome. That's amazing. And as far as heredity, are there other people in your family that have it, or does this have nothing to do with heredity?
From my husband's side, Amanda's uncle is type 1. But he was diagnosed when he was in his 30s. From my side, from what I've heard, is that I think my grandmother's siblings had it, but they already passed away. But they passed away in their 60s and 70s. So it wasn't like that young. My grandmother has diabetes, but she has the type 2, which is like a whole different one. But they don't know why it happens. They just say it can be food, it can be the environment, or it can be genes. So they are still researching, and there's like a whole conspiracy theory that is the vaccines, but it's been proven that it's not the vaccines. So it's just something that just happens. We don't know. Like every autoimmune disease, we don't know.
So what advice do you give another mom who walks into their baby girl's room and she has that cry that you talked about? Every 2 hours, she's ringing the bed wet. So what advice do you give to a mom that doesn't know what to do or what questions to ask?
I would say to them to talk to your pediatrician first and tell them, I want to make an appointment because I have a concern about my child doing, and write down all the symptoms and tell them straight up. Don't beat around the bush. Tell them, I want my child to be tested for diabetes. And you might get some resistance because I'm in a lot of Facebook groups, and some people had to really fight the medical providers about getting their child tested for that. And some medical providers, they don't do it. And the parent just sits there. You are the best advocate for your child. So just have your pediatrician test your child for diabetes. And if they don't do it, in Walmart, they sell glucose meters for under $20. You can just buy one and just test the child yourself at home, and you can put your mind at ease. I actually test every once in a while, Alexander. Pediatrician asked me one day, she was like, have you tested, Alexander? I'm like, I did. And we start laughing because she knows from me. She knows that because you have like a mini PTSD, I would say.
Right.
And you still have that fear. So you can do that, but just advocate. And if the pediatrician doesn't hear you, find another one.
Right.
Doctors are supposed to serve you. Like you are, quote unquote, the customer. So they are the provider and they're supposed to hear you out. So that's my advice.
That's great. That's big, because I know a lot of times, we think they're the expert. So we're going by what they say, and they're rushing and we're just trying to be seen. And so that's really good advice. You're the expert for your child and be their advocate. I love that. Absolutely.
Yes.
So tell everyone how they can find your blog or get any updates on anything that you're doing, the information that you're sharing.
Well, my blog is my name, Maria-Merced, MERCED.com. I do have a mini guideline for free. You just need to give me your name and email and you'll receive it in your inbox, and you can receive the guide on the symptoms and what to do when your child has like high blood sugars and low blood sugars. A disclaimer, I'm not a medical provider. You should always, always, always consult any health stuff that you're doing with your kids with your doctor.
Right.
But it's a guideline that you can have just to make reference to it. Because sometimes we lose papers and sometimes doctors don't provide this information. Sadly, it's true. They don't provide. At least in Massachusetts, they're very medical driven, but in other states, they are not. There's that guide. So you can just go Maria-Merced.com and you can see everything right there. And if there's something that you want to talk about, you guys can do a contact. Just send me a message and I'll respond gladly.
Perfect. And she has a beautifully laid out website. I'll also put the information in the show notes so they'll be able to find your information. So thank you so much, Maria, for sharing.
Thank you for inviting me.
No problem. Thank you for listening to the Navigating My Crazy podcast. Don't forget to send all of your questions to questionswithans@navigatingmycrazy.com, or you can complete the form on our website at navigatingmycrazy.com/contact. Also, join the community and chime in on the conversations by liking and following Navigating My Crazy on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. Subscribe and rate us 5 stars on iTunes or your favorite podcasting platform. Moms, have a great week and get ready for our next Talk It Out Tuesday.